You focused a lot on relationships. That seems to be one of the things, one of the strands of your career. Why?
I mean, it's everything about our existence. It's like the only, it's the only thing that I think makes us feel at all significant, in the universe, is our relationships with other people.
Well, romantic relationships specifically.
Okay, fair. Yeah. Well, romantic relationships.
Yeah. But you're right. No, how we relate to each other, absolutely. That's why we're here.
Have you seen the photos from the new telescope, the James Webb telescope?
A few of them, yeah. I mean, they're mind blowing.
They're mind blowing, but it also, you look at those photos, you're just like, we are ants. Like, we're not even ants. Like, that's we're like molecules, and nothing matters, and everything's insignificant. But relationships make life feel significant.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, in terms of romantic relationships, I think I think this is true for people beyond just, South Asian people, but like particularly with South Asian people, so much of our, for better or for worse, like our lives and our sense of self-worth and, our connection to our families and our community is defined through marriage, and the choices we make around marriage. So it just felt like fertile ground, for me to explore where we are as a culture, how we've evolved, how we've not evolved, the sort of inner conflict that people have, because so much of that gets played out, in romantic relationships, particularly in our community, because it's not just, to quote Sima Aunty, it's not just about two individuals. It's about so much more, in our culture. It's about families. It's about community. It's about identity, and all of that. So it's a lens to unpack a lot of other stuff.
Absolutely. So when you say Sima, you mean Sima Taparia.
Yes.
Sima from Mumbai.
Sima from Mumbai, yeah.
She is the main, I guess probably main character in many ways of Indian matchmaking.
Yes, indeed.
And also introduced to the world by you in A Suitable Girl.
Yes.
Which is your documentary from 2017?
Yes.
Okay. And how did you meet her? And I guess my question is, how much of what we see of Sima Aunty is Sima Aunty? Is that caricatured? Is that what she's like? What is she like?
So I met her because she was my matchmaker back in the day. So I met her as a client. And immediately when I met her, I was like, this lady is not going to find me a husband. It was different times. And it was also, that was as much sort of where I was in life, than any reflection on her abilities. But I was like, she is a star. Like, I just felt that immediately when I met her.
Right.
Because what you see on Indian matchmaking is 125% Sima Taparia.
Okay. So it's she, but dialed up a little bit.
Not even dialed up, actually.
Oh, well, then it's just 100%.
It's 100%.
Okay.
Like, it's 100. Yeah, I mean,
I thought you meant like it's her.
I was being emphatic. No.
Okay.
It's 100%. Yeah, we're getting into the math here.
Yeah, of course.
But no, that's exactly what she's like, and I think that's one thing that's really remarkable about her, and I really appreciate about her, is that she's always been that person, and she is, in spite of all the success of the show and everything, she's still that person. So she just is. She's just one of those people who's just like lives life like a little more heightened than the rest of us.
Yeah.
And, is like unbelievably charismatic and occasionally a little cringy and, very like smart, just larger than life person.
Do you find that so this is the thing with the show, right? I mean, she represents the traditional take, a lot of the advice that she gives to particularly women, because with respect to the, to the trans community and the, it's mostly focused on cisgendered heterosexual relationships.
Yeah.
Now, with respect to the gender spectrum, just with women, she does tend to give a lot more kind of advice or direction, or I feel criticism to women than she does to men, which is more traditionally representative of India. Are things in India still done like this through matchmakers or arranged? Like, do you know what the pie chart is, or like, what is it, cities or?
It's, you can't make any blanket statement about India, and I think that's like one lesson that I hope people take away from the show. You can't, like, everything you say about India, the opposite is also true. So you definitely have communities and places where there's like, things are a lot more traditional. You have, places and communities and families where it's totally the opposite, and it's even more progressive than maybe we would find here in America or in other Western countries. And sometimes those things exist in the same family, as in my family. I have like an end of my family that's very traditional, like Rajasthani, and then there's my dad who like gave up engineering, after getting a PhD and became a filmmaker. And my mom, has a master's degree and was the breadwinner for our family. And like,
that's very different.
Very different, so you can't really make blanket statements.
Well, I don't know if that's true though, because I think there's still a majority, right? So if we're looking at like, because obviously with respect to Muslim communities and Christian communities, and if we're looking at the Hindus in India, I'd still say probably 70 to 80% of them believe a lot of the traditional stuff. That is like the culture. Whether every single person in that culture subscribes to it, there's still like this veil or this like blanket that hangs over us, that everything that Sima Aunty is saying, we're all either going like this or we're going like this, but it does resonate.
It does resonate, yeah. I mean, and that's why I think like for all of the critique of the show, and a lot of it I think is, like great and very valid and important to understand like the full context.
Why do you think do you think that South Asians are saddled with this, like, because sometimes people say this about Never Have I Ever, they say this about Indian matchmaking, whatever, like, oh, it doesn't represent every experience. Like, I know, it's a story, it can't, it's one person's story, and you've been very clear, even in A Suitable Girl, to say this isn't everybody's experience, this is just these three. That said, I mean, so I guess my question is more around like, why in A Suitable Girl do you pick these three women to focus on? Are you trying to make some kind of statement?
Well, I can tell you sort of just the answer to why, there doesn't appear to be more diversity even within sort of the diasporic experiences or like the Indian experience reflected in pop culture. And that's because it comes down to the same sort of gradations of privilege. Who's in the room, right? Like I'm an upper middle class North Indian, person who, because my parents had the opportunity to come to this country, I was raised here, because my parents were upper middle class, I could pursue a career in film and television, I could get in those rooms, I could pitch things that reflect my experiences.
Sure.
So when the majority of the people who get in the room are people like me, who've had, college education, who've had, who are upper caste, are, whatever, all of upper middle class, all of those things, what's comes out the other side is going to be a reflection of what we know.
And equals out.
Exactly. So what I think, would really facilitate a lot of that change is more people being in the room, more Muslim creators, more Dalit creators, more Christian Indians, Jewish Indians, it's because there's already so few projects, that kind of break through. It's going to inherently be the ones that are reflective of the people in the room. And so far, that's been people like me. Now, hopefully that's going to change.
I love that. As far as that analysis of it, because I think we do saddle ourselves with this like burden of we have to tell everybody's story, and even with calling ourselves South Asians and not Indians, yes, if there are diverse people in the room that are more than just Indian, then of course we should be inclusive and say South Asian. But I think it's also just become this almost like dirty word that we don't even say Indian, even though, and that's why I think it's good that it's called Indian matchmaking, because it is primarily, it's in India.
Yeah.
But do you feel like our community does that to ourselves more than other communities do? Or we're just like, well, never have I ever, and the criticism is like, well, that's not, everybody isn't upper class. I'm like, well, actually, because we are immigrants of choice and because it's 1965 and all the racism before and that perpetuates even to this day, we are fairly homogenous. I mean, what you're seeing in Never Have I Ever is largely the experience. Why do we do that to ourselves then? To like, carry this burden of like, well, it's not inclusive enough?
I think because we've waited so long to see ourselves reflected, and it's easy for me to say from my perspective, that, oh, that's not fair and that shouldn't be this way, and why are people, why are we sort of pointing the gun at ourselves, when we're just trying to be the first. But if you're, like I get to be the first in line, right? Like we get to be the first in line to have our experiences reflected in pop culture, in the mainstream. But if the people who are who don't see themselves, but who consider themselves part of that community and who have waited just as long, if not longer, and who are facing real harm, because of lack of understanding of who they are, it's painful. I get it. I totally get it. I think it's again a thing to address systemically as opposed to point fingers at individual creators,
And I think we're guilty of that. I think we do that, like, oh, it should do this. And I'm like, you do have to understand that, like, this is the way the wave works. The majority is going to get represented first and then minorities later, which is that's just the number of stories. We're just looking at critical mass. Yeah. And then there will be other things. It's, in stand-up comedy, it's very similar. You have Russell Peters is the first person who broke through. His comedy is very broad. He'll be the first person to tell you that it is. Yeah. It's stereotypes and it's voices, and that's going to be the thing that gets amplified first as an introduction. Then you get like an Aziz Ansari, you get a Hassan Minhaj. Yeah. That's going to come later. The first breakthrough can't really be in any community. Yeah. It's going to be George Lopez, and then later you'll get someone else.
And there's always exceptions to the rule, but I will say, like, also, those of us, you know, anyone who's like the first to do something, think about who we're talking to in the room, you know? Often, like, we have to get clearance and, you know, from the 60-year-old white guy.
From white males, yeah.
Who's sitting on top. And, you know, like, I still feel this every day. It's like we have to sort of message things in terms that they understand just to get anything made. It's really hard to get something made in this business. It's really hard. It's nearly impossible. Yeah. And, you know, I think, like, those of us, you know, who have had that early, you know, been able to, like, open the door, like, we have to hold our foot in it, you know, and so we can have more and more diversity. So I think it's just the beginning. And hopefully, like, once the first few things have proven that our stories are universal and can be understood universally, that'll increase people's imaginations too for what other stories we can tell.
One question we often talk about, because I've organized this, you know, this thing called an entertainment meetup where we get a bunch of people together and it's a networking event kind of thing. How much has networking helped you in your career? Have you just kind of kept your head down and let your work speak for itself? Because sometimes I feel like all of these networking events are like, they're great, but what are we getting out of them? How much has networking helped you?
It's pretty much done everything for me.
Okay.
And it sort of starts with my dad.
Okay.
So my dad was like a pioneer, you know, Desi guy in the film business.
Yeah.
He started making movies in 1980 and was for a long time like one of very few Indian people working out here. And so he really mentored, you know, a lot of people. Yeah. And he loved going to like those things. He loved going to like the IFLA happy hours and like loved having coffee, like, you know, with people, young filmmakers who were like trying to figure out how to make it. And a lot of those people are now like huge filmmakers or executives. Like, the number of times I go into like a pitch or a meeting and somebody sees my last name and they're like, oh, are you related to Jag Mundhra? And I say, yeah, I'm his daughter. And they were like, oh, we had tea at your house, or we like met your dad for coffee, like at the Starbucks, like on the corner where we live. And so he really believed in that. Yeah. And he never did it with like any specific aim in mind. Like, what am I going to get out of this? It was just,
who he was.
It was who he was. He wanted to build community. He wanted to share information and resources and encourage people, and, you know, then also tap into people. Like, he learned a lot from like younger people too. And, you know, I've been the beneficiary. Like, that's my inheritance. Sure. You know, honestly, like, I've been the beneficiary of all of that like amazing goodwill, you know, that he has, you know, among the, you know, Desi people in the film industry. But also, like, I try to embody that too. So I think when you go into those networking situations with like how many like connections am I going to get that's going to lead me to this or that, you're going to feel disappointed all the time. Yeah. But if you go into it being like, I'm just going to like be with my community, and if I always go into those situations thinking, if I leave with like one meaningful conversation, like if I connect with one person and have a great conversation and follow it up, and, you know, like, who knows where that could lead me. It could be something that pays off in a week, or it could take 10 years. Sure. But if I've connected with somebody and feel like I've really made like a friend in the industry, one person out of all of those meetings, it's a huge win for me. So that's,
I love that. I always think of it that way, that, you know, there's things that are there's a means and an end, you know? And if we go into everything thinking that it's an end, you'll be happy. Yeah. If you think of it as a means, you're going to be miserable. Exactly. You're like, what is this going to lead to? What is this going to lead to? What is this going to lead to? Yeah. If you're always asking that question, you're never living in the moment. You're never living in the present. And you're always trying to use people or use this, or let me use this to parlay that into that. It's like, there's too much of that. Yeah. And it's like, if you could just approach it, do the work, tell people about the work. I'm not saying you just have to keep your head down and not do it, or not tell anyone about it. Yeah. But I do feel at the end of the day that, like, if you just go, wow, I got to do that. That was a thing that existed and now exists in the world. Yeah. Then that's it.
Yeah. exactly.
Let me just do the ending. So we really want to thank you for joining us, Smriti Mundhra,
pleasure.
daughter of Jag Mundhra,
Yes.
on
That's
what
how I
do you
like
bring
be
to the
identified.
table. Yes, that's a lot of what he brought to the table,
Yes.
and part of why you're here. But of course, your own work and your own talent, your own skill as a producer, director, writer, and it's really an honor to have you grace us with your presence because you're so successful, currently successful, and there's so much more to go. So we really want to thank you for being here today. And if there's anything you want to wrap up with, you want to tell people where to find you, or anything you want to say to the camera or to me, you're welcome to.
No, just thank you for creating the space for all of us to share and talk and learn from each other. And it's great questions, great coffee, great game. I had a blast.
I'm so appreciative. Thank you so much. Well, thanks everyone for joining us on What Do You Bring to the Table? I've been your host, Rajiv, and I still am.